Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sunday Service with the Atheist Reformation. Joining me once again is my co-host Harry,
Yeah.
who appears to have had a slight brain aneurysm. That's okay. We'll give him a moment to get over the stroke.
No, I'm just keeping it real and keeping it lively because it's all going to be downhill from here.
Okay, but just out of curiosity, do you smell toast?
Almonds?
Yeah, just as bad from a different direction. Why not?
Okay.
Anyways, so in the spirit of Father's Day, yes, by the way, it's Father's Day here in the U.S. If it is other places, well, happy Father's Day there too. But it
Hi.
is Father's Day here in the U.S. today, and much in the same vein of us all disappointing our fathers on a regular basis, to the point where they're always angry at us, they're always telling us, "Well, I'm really disappointed in you." Today, all the stories are just disappointing. They make you disappointed in humanity as a whole. However, just like with every dark cloud, there is a bit of a silver lining, and so the disappointment train does at least slow down at least a little bit because there are some things that are actively being done that even you at home can to some degree participate in if you have the means to do so. If you don't, then don't. I'm not going to be mad at you. No one is going to be mad at you. It's just the way life works sometimes. So, without further ado, let's get into the what I would consider the most lighthearted of the disappointing posts today for us to look at. And that is going to be, by the way, all four of these are going to be from The Conversation. Found some really good articles there, so that's what we're going to cover for this week as well. Also, as always, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon after you subscribe. That way you get notified. Hey, there's another episode of the Sunday Service coming out. Or, hey, there's another episode of Discussions with Atheists coming on. Or, whenever we finish with the Happy Science thing, you'll know when those start getting posted. Which, to kind of keep everybody updated on that, so we have a little bit of accountability for ourselves as well. First episode is what I would consider out of scripting, and I will probably be doing some test footage of that sometime this week, and at least that's the hope for it, for Harry and I to go over and see what we need to do, see what needs to be changed, tweaked, whatever, and then move on towards finalizing that one and moving on to the next episode. And then once we've got them all neatly edited, or at least as edited as my basic ass ham-fisted attempt at meandering my way through Adobe Premiere Pro, we'll see how it goes to the best of my abilities and see if y'all like it. And see if it gives y'all some information you may not have known, may not have heard before, or may just be reminded of that you forgot about. Who knows? As always, all the articles are going to be linked in the video description down below. There's also two other links down there. I will explain those here when we get to the stories that directly relate to those other links. And you'll find that out here as the show goes on. Also, you can follow the Atheist Reformation on Facebook at facebook.com/the Atheist Reformation. And if you want to be on the show, want to be on Discussions with the Theist, if you are a theist, or you have an idea for a show that you would like to see made, or an article or topic you would like to see covered, send it in an email to the atheistreformation@gmail.com. I do check that email daily. So, without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so the first story we're covering today, again, all coming from The Conversation, is how the ancient Israelites dealt with epidemics. The Bible tells of prophecy and rituals. So, not the best way to go about trying to deal with potential pandemic issues or epidemics and whatnot. But, let's give it a read and see what happens. So, starts off with catastrophes have always touched people's lives. With these words, the prophet Jeremiah addressed a disaster of his time centuries before the Common Era. Supposedly. The jury's still out, so to speak, as far as prophecy goes. Or
So
at least with some people. What?
wait, so Jeremiah foretold a prophecy hundreds of years or thousands of years before it happened. What was the claim there?
I don't know. It just it's talking about Jeremiah chapter 9 verse 20. It's the quote up at the start of the story. It says, "Death has come up into our windows, entered our palaces, to cut off the children from the streets and the young men from the squares." And that's just what this particular assistant professor at McMaster University of Religious Studies says, saying that with those words, the prophet Jeremiah addressed a disaster of his time centuries before the Common Era.
Oh, okay. So he's describing some kind
Right,
of...
he's describing what happened then, but he's attributed as being a prophet, so...
Okay.
A little bit confusing wording for some people, but, we'll... either way. So, scientists are working to explain the causes and origins of COVID-19 with evidence, yet conspiracy theories still abound. This is true. Also, there are some religious leaders that have suggested the virus is God's message for people. Whether the conspiracy theory is attributed to political maneuvering or divine intervention, these theories propose that science does not explain disasters sufficiently for many people. Sorry, not everything is CSI or what was that movie? Outbreak, that had Dustin Hoffman in it.
At this point, I'm not entirely unsure that 12 Monkeys didn't happen.
I don't know. We
because
probably would have heard
a
of
fan,
yeah.
I wanted to sneak in 12 Monkeys.
Well, hey, I'm a Bruce Willis fan. Why not? We can smuggle 12 Monkeys in there. Might not get past TSA, but it'll make it on YouTube.
That's clever.
Thank
Because
you.
of the opening scene. I like it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thought up that one on the fly, too. I'm actually quite pleased with myself on that one.
I'm pleased with yourself as well. See how it just
Don't
makes it
ever
all-
say that in that way ever again. You just ruined it, Harry. This is why we can't have nice things. Actually, we can't have nice things because we're broke. But, that's neither here nor there.
We can't have nice things because of the 4 stories today.
Yeah, that's just humanity can't have nice things because we break everything. So, throughout history, people have believed that disasters carry otherworldly messages. Often these messages propose that people have some responsibility for their present suffering. It's understandable. Rationalization. If I hadn't done this thing in this way, maybe this bad thing would not have happened, or maybe this other good thing would have happened. So, it's basic rationalization. We kind of have some explanations for that sort of thing with modern psychological thought. But, that doesn't work for everybody.
It's amazing how many of the things you could solve in your day-to-day life if you had multiple weeks dedicated to thinking about each one of the split-second decisions you have to make in a day.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, if we had, I would say if we had at least an hour to honestly think about each split-second decision we're sometimes required to make, that would adequately equip us to dealing with life for the most part. The only problem is it doesn't work that way. So we're left with what we're left with. And we make do. It also suggests that disasters such as a pandemic can teach some people something about how life should be lived. The Bible contains many stories of God-sent illnesses which typically communicate punishment for wrongdoings. Understanding these messages required interpretation, as with everything with the Bible, and they asked for specific ritual treatment. As a researcher of biblical studies, this author studied the techniques people used to consult God about the future. Such methods allowed people to prepare themselves for possible calamities held for them in the future. Understanding the human need to find explanations for the unknown may help us to understand why the many non-scientific explanations that people continue to give for the pandemic. So, to some level, I do agree with this, because it's our innate human need to find explanations for things that drove us to the scientific method, that has sent us to the moon, has put satellites in orbit. All of these things. It just so happens that when you have that level of curiosity that's kind of innate to a species, or so we can kind of establish there with humans, not everybody's smart enough to put somebody on the moon. And I don't mean that in the way of like people are dumb, but more along the lines of not everybody is cut out to be an astrophysicist. Not everybody is cut out to deal with theoretical mathematics. Not everybody is cut out to be a teacher. I'm not cut out to be a teacher. Couldn't handle it. Although, you know, the one good thing about being a teacher is that you have that, I guess to some degree, that innate pleasure of the best part about dealing with other people's kids. You get to give them back.
Oh, I was going to say you have blank slates that you can imprint your personal philosophies on.
True. Yeah. I mean, and I agree with the Lockean philosophy of tabula rasa. We're all born blank slates, because in that degree we're all born atheists. It falls on the rest of society to screw that up for us.
I disagree. I mean, it's kind of like what you were saying about the whole, we have that drive that leads us to, for the sciences, and leads us to try to make something bigger. I think that, you know, for some people who are equipped in certain mental faculties to pursue science to find those answers, I think there are certain people that are equipped in more spiritual capacities, or if you wanted to say charismatic or emotional capacities, to strive to find those answers within religion, or I guess even philosophy. I think there's that innate need and absence within humanity to find something to fill it.
True, but that often leads humanity to either not necessarily bad analogies. What's the
Bad
thing that I'm looking
that's
for?
My area.
That is very true, Harry. Bad analogies are very much your forte. No, more what I'm thinking of are, it leads people to bad ideas, and it's I'm fine with bad ideas. Bad ideas need to be known so we know to avoid them. The problem is, oftentimes we don't really find out about a bad idea until it has become so infectious into the societal zeitgeist that we can't get rid of it anymore. There's always going to be those few people, or that group of people, large, small, numerous, or few, that clings to that bad idea. We see this with flat Earth. We see this with science denial when it comes to things like climate change, denying evolution, denying the fact that the Earth is billions of years old.
I would say that bad ideas cannot hold up to scrutiny. And
they don't. It even comes down to arguments for the existence of deities, or of a deity. None of the arguments that have been put forth have actually stood up. What happens is, like, for instance, one of the biggest ones would be the ontological argument, talking about maximally great beings and nonsense like that, or necessary causation, that kind of stuff. it's not that those arguments are good. They're not. There are many problems with them. They've been illustrated. And then what happens is you have those that, because those arguments are a core part of their dogma, are or inform their dogmatic principles when it comes to religion and other veins of thought, they refuse to acknowledge that no, that there is a problem with it. They simply either try to reword the statement to where it looks like that problem no longer exists. Ed Fazer is famous for this one because he took the argument from motion and rewrote it with a bunch of different words and language where he changed things except didn't change the argument. He just used deliberately confusing terminology to avoid dealing with a problem that was already there and never went away.
Oh, that reminds us of our non-existent friend with Storgate.
Exactly. Like, I mean, yeah.
Which
Talking about story. Say what?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say that leads me to the point that I was going to make, which is that bad ideas don't hold up to scrutiny. I think the reason that we have so many bad ideas existing in our society right now is because we're not scrutinizing them, because people are splitting up into these little echo chambers. And if they find one that can confront them, then they break off or they block them or they refuse to engage. And if you see something you don't like, you take away their platform and you don't and allow them to speak. And so their idea it's not given the chance to be publicly destroyed.
They're hit they hit everybody around them with a heckler's veto is what they do.
Yeah.
And also, my younger brother, hey, thanks for tuning in, bud. KCA Randy, Drew, what up, yo? Hey, Randy, how you doing, man? Glad to see you could make it tonight. Hopefully we didn't take you away from anything too important. It is Father's Day after all. But hey, we're all disappointments, so come join the party. But anyway, continuing on with the story here, talking about epidemics in the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament for Christians. One God is usually accountable for all spheres of life. Hence, this God has both a role in bringing illness and also in curing it. One narrative where God sends plagues concerns the Passover, the 10 plagues of Egypt. One is a plague of boils on human and animal bodies, Exodus 9:9. Despite the disaster, Pharaoh does not let the Jews leave. According to the story, Pharaoh is not infected by the boils, so he can witness God's control. And so on and so forth. You know, that couldn't just be social distancing that saved him. Who knows? Ritual response to plagues. The Bible seldom mentions doctors, true, but various religious experts, including prophets and priests, provide responses to the illnesses. Prophets were considered instrumental in conveying godly messages to people. In a situation of crisis, they explained why God was upset. For instance, the prophet Jeremiah warns King Zedekiah that all the inhabitants of Jerusalem will die by the sword, famine, and pestilence due to the Israelites' transgressions. Whereas prophets delivered godly messages and helped to uncover the reason of illness, priests communicated with God through rituals. If the cause of illness was God's anger, only God could provide recovery from it. Therefore, one had to appease the anger, and they carry out the correct rituals, supposedly. For example, priests advised the Philistines to return the Ark of the Covenant together with a guilt offering, and for Samuel, guilt offering was a sacrifice which the priest carried out especially in a situation of an unintentional offense on behalf of the transgressor. Talking about rituals offering comfort, yeah. So kind of getting into all of this. I mean, okay, the rituals don't fix anything. They're not going to fix anything.
Well, most of the time. There are some rituals that have a pragmatic effect. like washing your hands under running water.
Which Jesus said you didn't have to do anymore.
Well, the point is that I think there's some rules about cleanliness that if you look at the rules of the cleanliness, you're like, oh, well, scientifically, this does have an effect upon it if you follow the rules as they're written. It's just that the cause and the effect are not clearly detailed. So, I mean, I'm not saying that rituals that have an actual effect that's just not understood properly.
Well, I mean, then you take the supposed curative ritual for leprosy, mm-hmm. which is get a couple of pigeons, kill them, drip their dirt on your head, and go stand in a dirty river.
Yeah, I don't see that one working, but I'm not.
Yeah, no, yes, let's go bathe in microbe and bacteria infested river water with open leprosy sores.
Where is that one found at, by the way? I'm just curious.
I'd have to look that one back up.
It was much like that in no Sunday school.
Say what?
I said they didn't teach me that one in no Sunday school.
Of course not. They're not going to teach you something that inconveniences them.
Yeah.
Let's see. Biblical cure for leprosy. Here we go. Leviticus chapter 14, verse 3. Yeah, the priest is to go outside the camp and examine them if they have been healed of their defiling skin disease. Yeah, this is weird. These are the regulations for any diseased person at the time of their ceremonial cleansing, when they are brought to a priest. This is supposedly something God says to Moses. Priest is to go outside the camp and examine them. If they have been healed of their defiling skin disease, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the person to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds to be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the defiling disease, and then pronounce them clean. After that, he is to release the live bird in the open fields. The person to be cleansed must wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe with water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. After this, they may come into the camp, but they must stay outside their tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must shave off all their hair, shave their head, beard, eyebrows, rest of the hair. They must wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water, and they will be clean.
I mean, all that second part actually sounds like it has some good reason for it. I'm not understanding what the blood and the hyssop sprinkle is, but I'm pretty sure that, like, having no body hair and taking 2 showers is a good way to sanitize yourself.
True, but that's not really an effective way to treat leprosy.
Also
Great
true.
for lice, not leprosy.
Yeah. Yeah, this does sound like a really good treatment for body lice.
True, but when you go through the actual translations through Strong's Concordance and all that, the defiling disease is leprosy.
I feel like if you did some defilement, you're a lot more likely to catch body lice than you were to catch leprosy, but that's me just making an assumption there.
I don't know. You go back to that time period in human history when there weren't really a whole lot of hygiene standards.
Yeah.
You know, leprosy becomes very contagious at that point.
Yeah.
And if you have leprosy, have an open sore, anything like that, and you go into running water, if that's the town's main water source, congratulations. You just may be responsible for giving the entire community that disease.
Well, if it's running water, you can always go downstream, right? I mean, it's not like there's another village that's further downstream that would catch anything from.
I don't know. Is there? You don't know.
Not that we care about.
Okay, so just, yeah.
Tribalism.
I suppose, but, you know, and then we got the whole ethical conundrums and conundra and whatnot.
We
Anyways.
don't have to worry about everyone else in the world to the second part of the book.
Yeah. Anyways, the whole thing about, like, Pharaoh not getting sick because God ordained it or whatever. Sorry, people weren't allowed to touch Pharaoh. So if you have a plague of boils, and then you have a person who lives separate from everybody else, and their own staff lives separate from everybody else, and no one's allowed to touch them, chances are that person's not going to get it.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what? I guess you could say that biblically social distancing works. I mean, either way. So, carrying out the right rituals, yeah, sure. Let's take a leprosy patient, dunk him in the river, shave him up, wax him down, try and use him as a surfboard, and sprinkle some bird blood on him. So, rituals offer comfort. Okay, one may not have control over their fate, but rituals offered some sense of security in the midst of catastrophes. Of course, if you're in a drought, you have rain dances. If there's famine, you pray for rain, you pray for an animal to wander into a trap, you pray for an early harvest. Okay, I get it. You go through rituals, you go through the motions. It's a placebo effect. It's a psychological salve. And I'm okay with that. But the problem that I have with it is that people choose to do this over going to a doctor, over listening to best practices as laid out by people like the CDC. And they're like, nah, we're just going to go pray it away. I'm sorry, if you can't pray the gay away, you can't ritual the COVID away. It doesn't work.
Well, technically,
unless your ritual consists of proper hand washing under warm running water for at least 20 seconds, and you're scrubbing your hands real good with a good antibacterial and antimicrobial soap.
I was going to say, isn't there something in the Bible about like praying in private and not praying on the street corners?
Sure, I don't know. I don't feel like Googling it.
Stay home and pray.
You're the theist. You're supposed to know this shit.
Yeah, it's something in the New Testament about like the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They go out in public and pray because they want everyone to know how holy they are. And it's like that's not the purpose of prayer. It's a personal thing, and it's like you're better off to just stay at home and pray. I just can't think of the exact verse, but it's like, see right there, social distancing.
Yeah.
If you're properly praying, then you're not spreading it.
You never know. So anyway, people have always searched for meaning in their misfortune and difficult times. It can be comforting to believe that things happen for a reason and something can be learned in chaotic situations. Okay, that doesn't mean that everything has a reason, everything has a purpose. That just means that you as a person or people in general can't psychologically handle chaos, so they impose patterns upon it. That's how you get prophecies. They try to forcibly impose a pattern. Like, look at that complete crapshoot of a show that was on History Channel years ago, Dan Brown's Bible Code.
Oh.
Ancient Aliens is just as bad from a different direction.
I just want to take a moment and say right now that for every atheist out there that points at the Bible Code, there's a theist out there pointing at ancient aliens. And neither one of y'all are actually coming together and like being beneficial toward each other like me and Drew are.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Ancient Aliens has nothing to do with atheists for the most part. A good portion of that, like most people involved with that show, were believers.
UFO believers? Like Fox Mulder or like religious?
Like religious, a good portion of them, yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought there was like I want to believe.
No, not David Duchovny, not Fox Mulder, not back in the 90s when television was less shitty. Or at least was our kind of shitty. It was a shitty we could relate to.
I was about to say, like, Aaron Spelling ruled the 90s for TV, and you're going to say it wasn't terrible?
I'm sorry, who?
See? Aaron Spelling? Come on, Melrose Place, 90210?
Oh, I never watched any of that crap.
Fox always came out with something every week, was like, man versus nature. Can this grizzly bear outrun a Navy SEAL?
That was in the 2000s, though, wasn't it?
I thought that was the 90s. I'm not sure. Or like real police footage, too hot for cops.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. The show Cops, to me, I come from a law enforcement family, okay? I've worked in law enforcement. I have friends that are still in law enforcement, friends that have worked in law enforcement, and I'm sorry. To me, at the end of the day, Cops is just the prelude to Jerry Springer. Like, the people that show up on Cops are probably on Jerry Springer within the next week or two.
So the other day,
I mean, if you want to get right down to it, and I come from not a well-to-do, well-off background or anything like that, so I think I can actually get away with saying this because, well, it's true, and that is, I'm sorry, but Cops is white trash Olympics. I mean, how long can you stand getting tased? And that's the. And then how far can you walk after getting shot with 3 different tasers? That's your endurance test right there.
So about a week ago, I was somewhere with someone, and if you're watching the show, I don't mean this to be offensive, but I was having a conversation, and the person was like, when you're watching Cops, and you know how you see someone that's smart, and right then I'm thinking, you don't if you're watching Cops. Like, I've never seen a smart person on there. And then they go and they say the person that's just like, when he comes up, the officer comes up, and they start asking him questions, and they have their ID, and then they're like, I want to talk to a lawyer, and they show the ID, and they don't say anything else. They just sit with their arms crossed. And I'm thinking, A, I don't think I've ever seen that on an episode of Cops. And B, I don't know if I would ever take legal advice off of something I saw a suspect do on an episode of Cops.
No.
I'm not even entirely sure that the show is real. Like, I still have it in the back of my head, like, they've got to, like, this is staged. This is just
I don't know. I don't care. And I may disagree with perhaps the manner in which it came about that Cops was taken off the air. However, I'm not upset about that stupid freaking show no longer existing. I have no quarrel with that.
Not watching it forever would have some kind of impact on the show not making any advertising revenue. And I was wrong, because there is some segment of society that was their opium. and they were just like, "Feed me Seymour" every time a rerun came on.
I don't even.
Did
Yeah,
I?
see, even Randy, he's got a little arrow pointing at himself. Hates TV show cops. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Right there with you.
Did I
The
just
show
do?
is so stupid. It's white trash Olympics. I mean,
Yeah,
it's girls gone wild for people who can't afford that.
yeah, I can see that.
I mean, like that's what that is. Anyway, finishing up with this one. Different explanations allow people to create their own responses to cope with the unknown. Recognizing this human need to rationalize crisis helps us to understand various explanations that people continue to give for the pandemic. Okay, that's fine. Recognizing that human beings will rationalize crises. We understand that. That doesn't make the opinion about it valid. That doesn't make the statement correct. And it's like, I get that we need to acknowledge that people may feel a certain way. However, that doesn't make them correct. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. Is that people associate the way they feel with being correct about an issue. And that's just not the case. So anyway, let's move it on down the road to our next segment. And this is where things get all stressy depressy. Blasphemy laws in Muslim countries. We might get letters.
I would hope that we would get mail of some kind.
I mean, yeah, it'd be pretty cool.
That would be so awesome to find people who are like, they heard a thought and they're like, I really want to set y'all straight and have like a conversation about this.
Oh yeah,
But
that would be fantastic. Yeah, that would be pretty awesome. I would like to see that. But anyways, moving on down the line. So Junaid Hafiz, a university lecturer in Pakistan, had been imprisoned for 6 years when he was sentenced to death in December of 2019. The charge, blasphemy, specifically insulting the Prophet Muhammad on Facebook. Ah, gotta love that old-time religion. Pakistan has the world's second strictest blasphemy laws after Iran, according to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Hafiz, whose death sentence is under appeal, is one of about 1,500 Pakistanis charged with blasphemy or sacrilegious speech over the last 3 decades. So far, no executions have taken place, but since 1990, 70 people have been murdered by mobs and vigilantes who have accused them of insulting Islam. Several people who defend the accused have been killed too, including one of Hafiz's lawyers and 2 high-level politicians who publicly opposed the death sentence of Asia Bibi, a Christian woman convicted for verbally insulting Prophet Muhammad. Though Bibi was acquitted in 2019, she fled Pakistan. Of 71 countries that criminalize blasphemy, 32 are majority Muslim. Punishment and enforcement of these laws varies. Blasphemy is punishable by death in Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Brunei, Mauritania, and Saudi Arabia. Among non-Muslim majority cases, the harshest blasphemy laws are in Italy, where the maximum penalty is 3 years in prison. Half of the world's... Italy. Interesting. Half of the world's 49 Muslim-majority countries have additional laws banning apostasy, meaning people may be punished simply for leaving Islam. All countries with apostasy laws are Muslim-majority except India. Apostasy is often charged along with blasphemy. You know, an enhancement charge. Gotta love those. This class of religious laws is quite popular in some Muslim countries. According to a 2013 Pew survey, about 75% of respondents in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa and South Asia favor making Sharia law or Islamic law the official law of the land. Among those who support Sharia, around 25% in Southeast Asia, 50% in the Middle East and North Africa, and 75% in South Asia say they support executing those who leave Islam. That is, they support laws punishing apostasy with death. So, I mean, okay, you're charged with apostasy and blasphemy. I got one real question, though. Islam doesn't believe in reincarnation, so how are they going to kill you twice?
Is blasphemy a death sentence as well?
Yes. It is punishable by death.
Well, I guess it's technically possible for you to blaspheme but not leave the religion, or to
True. But if you become an apostate, they charge you with both typically.
Oh.
Because it's blasphemy to become an apostate.
Are they saying it's not possible to become one? Like, how is that blasphemy?
They're saying that it is blasphemous to leave Islam. So that means that you must So that means that becoming an apostate, leaving the religion, makes you not only an apostate but a blasphemer. At which point you are now guilty of both crimes.
Well, what's the definition of blasphemy?
It varies based on the country. For some, it's as simple as saying anything that's insulting to Islam. And it's considered an affront or an insult to Islam to leave the religion.
Oh, okay.
So yes, all apostates are blasphemers, but not all blasphemers are apostates.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fun stuff. So this author wrote a book in 2019 called Islam, Authoritarianism, and Underdevelopment. They trace the roots of blasphemy and apostasy laws in the Muslim world back to a historic alliance between Islamic scholars and the government. See, this is why this should be a pretty clear illustration that religion and government do not mix and should not mix. So, yeah, people need to stop trying to legislate based on their religion. Just saying. Starting around the year 1050, certain Sunni scholars of law and theology called the ulema began working closely with political rulers to challenge what they considered to be the sacrilegious influence of Muslim philosophers on society. Muslim philosophers had for 3 centuries been making major contributions to mathematics, physics, and medicine. This is very true. Yeah, developing the Arabic numeral system, along with the Latin sail. That's what allowed for sailing beyond the coastline, catching the wind and whatnot. So that's a lot of major developments came out of the Muslim world in the back around that time, very much so. And invented a forerunner of the modern camera. The conservative ulema felt that these philosophers were inappropriately influenced by Greek philosophy and Shia Islam against Sunni beliefs. So we have 2-level tribalism going on here. We have the tribalism against Greek philosophy, and then we have the tribalism against another form of Islam that doesn't agree with you. The most prominent in consolidating Sunni orthodoxy was the brilliant and respected Islamic scholar Ghazali, who died in the year 1111. In several influential books still read today, Ghazali declared 2 long-dead leading Muslim philosophers, Farabi and Ibn Sina, apostates for their unorthodox views on God's power and the nature of resurrection. Their followers could be punished with death. As modern-day historians Omid Safi and Frank Griffel assert, Ghazali's declaration provided justification to Muslim sultans from the 12th century onward who wished to persecute, even execute, thinkers seen as threats to conservative religious rule. This ulema-state alliance began in the mid-11th century in Central Asia, Iran, and Iraq, and a century later spread to Syria, Egypt, and North Africa. And these regimes, questioning religious orthodoxy and political authority, wasn't merely dissent, it was apostasy. So, criticizing the government at that point is now blasphemous. Again, religion and government becoming intertwined. It does not work.
The more I hear stories like this, the more I realize that there wasn't some like progressive uh, era when people became more forward thinking and enlightened. There's just always been a scattering mass of intelligent, forward thinking people that were willing to delay immediate gratification for something bigger, and a scattering of complete jerks that wanted ultimate power within their lifetime and
Yes.
wanted to squash anything else.
Precisely. There's always going to be an inconvenient nut job.
Yeah.
Anyway, wrong direction. So, parts of Western Europe were ruled by a similar alliance between the Catholic Church and monarchs. So, Christianity, sorry, you're guilty too. These governments assaulted free thinking too. During the Spanish Inquisition between the 16th and 18th century, thousands of people were tortured and killed for apostasy. Blasphemy laws were also in place, if infrequently used, in various European countries until recently. Denmark, Ireland, and Malta all recently repealed those laws, but they continue to persist in many parts of the Muslim world. In Pakistan, the military dictator Zia-ul-Haq, who ruled the country from 1978 to 1988, is responsible for its harsh blasphemy laws. An ally of the ulema, Zia updated blasphemy laws, written by British colonizers to avoid interreligious conflict, to defend specifically Sunni Islam, and increased the maximum punishment to death. From the 20s until Zia, these laws had been applied only about a dozen times since they had become a powerful tool for crushing dissent. Some dozen Muslim countries have undergone a similar process over the past 4 decades, including Iran and Egypt. The conservative ulema based their case for blasphemy and apostasy laws on a few reported sayings of Prophet Muhammad, known as hadith, primarily, whoever changes his religion, kill him. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Can't really argue with the context on that one.
Yeah.
But many Muslim, Islamic scholars and Muslim intellectuals reject this view as radical. Yes, it's radical. However, he's the father of Islam. If he is supposed to be what he is claimed to be, then what he says goes.
So what would be the grounds other than just that it's a radical view? Like, is there, he was speaking about one very specific battle that they were about to go into, or is it just
Well, let's take a look.
Well, we're going to accept everything except for this one thing that's pretty inconvenient to justifying. Like, that's the card that if you pull it out, the entire thing just collapses on itself, so we're just going to neglect it.
Yeah. So, here it goes. This hadith, cited in the Sahih of Bukhari, is considered authentic and for many is the primary evidence available for this on this issue for Muslim jurists. Bukhari mentions this hadith inter alia in the context of the fourth Caliph Ali's burning of some heretics or Zanadika. When news of this came to the companion Ibn Abbas, he is reported to have said that if he were Ali, he would not have burnt them because of the prohibition on punishing human beings by fire, the punishment of God. Instead, Ibn Abbas said that he himself would have executed them on the grounds of the Prophet's words, whosoever changes his religion, kill him. So no, this is something that has been going on and been taken literally.
So in that, it doesn't say that their prophet said it. It says that one of his followers claims he said it.
No, this is just what they're citing. This is... So, Ibn Abbas quoted the Prophet as saying, whosoever changes his religion, kill him. that hadith has been published and has been labeled as authentic,
So
as
the
being the
hadith,
words of Muhammad.
so the hadith has a quote,
Yes. The
but it's
hadith.
not actually.
Okay, so you have the
Yeah.
Quran, and then you have
Yeah.
hadiths. The Quran is the Islamic Bible. The hadiths are the written words and thoughts of Muhammad.
Right. Right.
In this particular hadith, there is the quote, "Whosoever changes his religion, kill him," and that has been that hadith that quote is found in has been labeled as authentic, as in they're pretty sure Muhammad wrote it, or they're sure that Muhammad wrote it. And so Abbas citing that, since it is considered authentic, would be considered a literal, taking it literally and saying, yeah, do it. So apparently, yeah, there's some grounds for it, as it's not just some willy-nilly thing that happens to be there. No, it's a thing.
Yeah.
So, however, it's incredibly contradictory. Because a lot of Islamic scholars and Muslim intellectuals do reject the view as radical. They argue that Muhammad never executed anyone for apostasy, nor encouraged his followers to do so, despite the supposed authentication of that hadith. Although
he never told anyone to do it, except for this one time that he actually explicitly told people to.
Yeah. Nor is criminalizing sacrilege based on Islam's main sacred text, the Quran, contains over 100 verses encouraging peace, freedom of conscience, and religious tolerance. In chapter 2, verse 256, the Quran states, "There is no coercion in religion." Chapter 4, verse 140 urges Muslims to simply leave blasphemous conversations. When you hear the verses of God being rejected and mocked, do not sit with them. By using their political connections and historical authority to interpret Islam, however, the conservative ulema have marginalized more moderate voices. And the same is starting to happen with Christianity again. The extremists are starting to win because they're barking louder than everyone else.
I guess I got to start barking loud.
Apparently so. So across the globe, Muslim minorities, including the Palestinians, Chechens of Russia, Kashmiris of India, Rohingya of Myanmar, and the Uyghurs of China, have experienced severe persecution. No other religion is so widely targeted in so many different countries. Alongside persecution are some Western policies that discriminate against Muslims, such as laws prohibiting headscarves in schools and the U.S. ban on travelers from several Muslim-majority countries. Both those things are rife with political issues, so we're not going to discuss that in detail. Such Islamophobic laws and policies can create the impression that Muslims are under siege and provide an excuse that punishing sacrilege is a defense of the faith.
That was some mental gymnastics right there. Because we're being attacked in another country, it justifies us murdering people for not being a part of our faith.
Well, but see, here's here's a problem with that though, is that that it can create that impression, because while it does require some mental gymnastics to get to that point, we have plenty of evidence showing that this happens every single day in this country.
Okay.
Flat earthers.
I'm sure it's not literally people like leaving flat Earth and then being killed by
No. I'm talking about the excuse that punishing sacrilege is a defense of the faith, meaning that it drives a community to become more extreme the more regulation they encounter.
Okay.
For instance, you have Flat earthers who think that the government is against them. It's all a great big conspiracy. NASA is apparently the the biggest CGI factory this side of Dreamcast. Or Dreamcast. DreamWorks, excuse me.
Sega.
Right? Granted, that was a big disappointment too. So, continuing on the theme of today.
My favorite thing about flat earthers is once Game of Thrones came out, they added a whole part of the theory where like the government is in Antarctica keeping the White Walkers at bay.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Hey, you know what? At that point, I actually kind of wish that the world was flat. Because that would be something I'd want to see. I think that would be cool. Would suck if we lost, but it'd be cool to see. Or, okay, look at people like Ken Ham, Answers in Genesis, the Institute for Creation Research, evolution deniers. Every single time, and I mean every time, that any kind of criticism is levied toward them, they say it's an attack on Christianity. It's an attack on freedom of religion. It's an attack on faith. It's an attack on spirituality. It's an attack on free thinking. It's an attack on the First Amendment. Every single time. This happened in 2005 when the Kitzmiller v. Dover trial was decided against the Discovery Institute. Or not Discovery Institute, they ruled against the Dover School Board of Education. I mean, we see this happen all the time in the United States. So, somewhere that has not progressed as far as, say, Western society has, at least by Western society standards, becoming more extreme when encountering regulation that stops them from doing something that they would normally do, yeah, I'd say it's entirely logical to make, not necessarily the assumption, but make the observation that perhaps depending on what the regulation is, that could lead to more extremism.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not saying from the author's perspective that they're incorrect in their analysis of it. I'm just thinking that from the...
I'm not saying it. No, I'm not. I disagree that it would somehow justify punishing blasphemy and apostasy with death. No, that far and away does not justify the practice. But what I am saying is that when you encounter regulations or laws and policies that a lot of people view as being Islamophobic, yeah, I can see where that would radicalize people, because it gives them ammunition. It gives them, I mean, what's the best way to effectively shut somebody down who doesn't like you?
Take away their voice?
Right, but what's a way you can do that without, say, infringing on their First Amendment rights? You just don't give them something to bitch about.
Okay.
Let them have the headscarves in schools. If you want to ban travel to certain countries, okay, publish the reasons why.
Yeah.
And don't just publish the reasons why. Cite sources, show statistics, show evidence to support why we need to curtail travel to this particular country. That's what it's going to take. Because look back at the Red Scare of the 1950s. The more Joe McCarthy went hunting for communists in Hollywood, the more people in Hollywood started becoming communists.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that it was an innately causal factor of communism growing in Hollywood, but it certainly lends itself to be a strong correlative value. So, and makes a final statement at the end: the Quran does not require punishing sacrilege, authoritarian politics do. And again, that's where the issue of causing that split, erecting that wall between religion and government, and nary the two shall meet. At least that's my take on things. Anyway, moving right along. This story's over. Let's look towards something a little more depressing.
Wow, we just hit the 1 hour mark.
I know. So we're going to try and breeze through these a little bit, because some of this is going to be information that we've covered in the past, on past live streams, talking about the CAA and the NRI legislations in India. So, India's coronavirus pandemic shines a light on the curse of caste. Yeah, people thought that Gandhi somehow completely dissolved the caste system in India. Sorry, no, that wasn't the case. The caste system still very much exists in that country. So, long before the outbreak of COVID-19, a more pernicious form of social distancing was widespread across India: the caste system. In one form or another, this system, which has existed in the region for over a millennium, it's 1,000 years, in case somebody didn't know that, has long ensured social segregation based on one's place in the hierarchy. Outside of the four main groups that make up the caste system, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and the Shudras, stand the Dalits, the so-called untouchables, that number some 200 million, so almost the entire population of this country, about 2/3 of it, make up that mindset. Think about that for a minute. Is just considered the dregs of society. So yeah, members of that group, shunned for centuries as the lowest in society, are now at the forefront of the coronavirus pandemic, seemingly more at risk of infection due to their social status and increasingly discriminated against for the perceived threat of contagion they pose. The caste system can be traced back over 2,000 years, but under British colonial rule, the system was reinforced and the categories became more rigid. After India gained its independence from Britain in 1947, its new constitution formally banned the practice of untouchability based on caste. But 70 years on, the system still permeates everyday life. It is especially evident in the realm of marriage. Hardly a day passes in India without a news report highlighting troubles associated with an intercaste marriage. Given the tenacity and pervasiveness of the caste system, it is hardly surprising that some of the worst sufferers of the COVID-19 pandemic are India's untouchables, the Dalits. As a group, they remain among the most downtrodden in India, with a disproportionate number of Dalits confined to mostly menial and low-paying jobs like construction work or as janitors or tanners, leather workers. As a scholar of contemporary Indian politics who has written extensively about ethnic and sectarian conflict in the country, this author took a keen interest in how the pandemic has hit India along caste lines. The Dalits have proved to be especially vulnerable for a range of reasons, chief amongst them being poverty. Makes sense. The vast majority of them are poor despite a vast affirmative action program that India put in place shortly after independence. Consequently, even under the best of circumstances, they have limited access to health care and any other form of social protection. During the pandemic, their plight has only worsened. They are in large part casual laborers, often working in disparate parts of India, far away from their homes. As a result, many found themselves stranded away from their families when Prime Minister Narendra Modi ordered a nationwide lockdown on March 23rd, giving only 4 hours warning. Yeah, that works. The Indian press has carried heartbreaking accounts of their struggles to return home. One photo of a migrant worker crying by the roadside in Delhi as he tries to visit his dying son during the lockdown has become a lasting image of the crisis. Being a migrant worker in India, regardless of caste background, is a tough existence. Working conditions are harsh. The work often hazardous, and pay mostly a pittance. Most migrants live in slum-like conditions at the mercy of callous landlords. Even so, many send a large portion of their earnings home to their families. As a result, migrant workers rarely, if ever, have any meaningful savings that could enable them to tide over unexpected financial woes, like the total economic shutdown of the coronavirus pandemic. This has meant scarce resources to pay for transportation home. Even money to recharge phones is hard to come by, cutting off communication between migrant workers and loved ones during the crisis. They face an additional burden during the pandemic, which is social ostracism by higher caste members, even those in the same occupation as themselves. The shunning of Dalits has not abated during this crisis. If anything, it's worsened, with some high-ranking members of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party openly blaming the Dalits for spreading the coronavirus. On May 25th, Chief Minister of the populous Uttar Pradesh state, Yogi Adityanath, who is also a Hindu priest, suggested that migrant workers returning to his state were carriers of COVID-19, adding that the bulk of them were Dalits. Opposition leaders were swift to condemn his remarks, but Modi and his national government have maintained a deafening silence on the subject. As a result of such rhetoric, Dalit migrants trekking home, often on foot, can expect little by way of comfort or assistance from others because of their caste status and fears that they may be infected with the coronavirus. In the immediate future, Dalits can expect little relief. 5 years ago, when Modi first swept into power, many Dalits believed his promises to uplift the country's poor and duly voted for him. However, after the divisive leadership of his first term in office and their experience in the lockdown, many Dalits are now disillusioned with him and his Bharatiya Janata Party. The pandemic has underscored that India's caste system is still very much in existence, and in the eyes of many Indians, Dalits remain untouchable in a way that extends beyond current hygiene practices. So, Harry, you've been to India? Is this true
Yep.
or is this bullshit?
Mostly true from what I've seen. It's not as much directly enforced by the laws in the areas.
No,
But
it's like it. I hate to. It's like the Jim Crow South. Law enforcement may not enforce it, but society sure as hell did.
well, there was actual like rules and laws in the Jim Crow South. Like the government
True.
was
There were saying this is more like a social version of that.
Yeah, this would be. I'm trying to think of a good analogous situation. Um, this would be a lot closer to how, after the Civil Rights Act had been passed, how mixed children were treated,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
where there was so much, basically no group a lot of times would stand up for them.
Right. They couldn't gain acceptance anywhere, basically. Yeah. No, I can understand that. So this is the part where it gets a little less shitty. The story itself is still utter crap. As in, what's happening to them is crap. It sucks. But for those who would like to try and do something, if they can, and I'm going to have this ticker running for the rest of the show because it gives the web address to another fundraiser or method of donating. Charitable donations and whatnot can be received for another group that we're about to talk about. And that is the Dalit Freedom Fund. That is through changingthepresent.org. They handle everything for DFF stateside. These are this particular charity works towards gaining money so that they can actually purchase equipment and supplies to allow people who are in the Dalit caste to learn a different trade, learn something that would allow them to create something themselves and then market and sell that. Basically, a way of helping them start their own business. Everything from buying sewing machines to tools to things like that. As well as providing financial assistance and some housing assistance, though that's not a part of it that I was able to actually really get into and investigate before wanting to go ahead and promote them here. So yeah, check them out. Links in the description, or you can write it down, however you want to do it. Moving on to the next story and the final story of the day. Coronavirus closes in on Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh's cramped, unprepared camps. So, the Rohingya were mentioned earlier in the apostasy law, or the blasphemy story, that kind of thing. So, we're going to talk about them here now. So, we know how coronavirus is spreading quickly. It spreads very quickly in densely populated areas, and one of those is Bangladesh. Even though they put a nationwide shutdown in, this says a month ago. This story was published. It doesn't say when, but April 20th. So yeah, that's still a problem over there. I did check on that. So the preventative measure has proven challenging to implement due to a lack of awareness of a coronavirus and the absence of a social safety net. Extreme poverty also forces many Bangladeshis to keep working and looking for food despite the risks. As of April 20th, they had right around 3,000 confirmed cases. It has not yet spread into the refugee camps that house the Rohingya Muslims who fled ethnic violence in Myanmar. In 2017, according to a recent update from the humanitarian organizations that work in the camps. But an outbreak in the overcrowded camps is almost certain to come eventually. Just a moment. Sorry about that. I had a slight audio issue I had to address real quick. But an outbreak in the overcrowded camps is almost certain to come eventually, and when it does, the damage could be severe. Even in normal times, people in refugee camps often struggle to survive, living as they do with minimal resources, food, and housing. The author visited the Rohingya refugee camps in Bangladesh and saw that with their own eyes. And Bangladesh was their home country as well. So Salah Ahmed. Yeah. Many of the Rohingya he met in those camps, I'm not even going to try to butcher that, had seen family members murdered and tortured. Most had experienced or borne witness to rape and had their houses burned down. The Myanmar military's violent assault on this minority was later declared a textbook example of ethnic cleansing by the United Nations. The nearly 1 million traumatized Rohingya who migrated to neighboring Bangladesh now live in cramped, makeshift housing in the country's southeast near the border with Myanmar. In the camp areas, the basic hygiene that is essential for preventing the spread of the disease is simply impossible. On average, 4 to 5 Rohingyas live together in a one-room hut, which is often constructed of tarp and bamboo sticks. Their floors, where they sleep on plastic cloth or paper, are usually muddy, Water supply, sanitation, and sewage facilities are terribly inadequate. So, this just talks about all the problems that are currently going on with the Rohingya. The fact they've been marginalized, driven out of their home country, beaten, tortured, killed, you know, the whole 9 yards. Ethnic cleansing. Like the Houthis and the Tutus or something like that. That was Rwanda, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is what's happened to them, and they've been driven out of their country, and they are living in an area that it's not good conditions. And that's not entirely the fault of the Bangladeshi government. They are doing the best they can with this massive influx of a ton of people over a very short period of time. Now, could they be doing more? Possibly. I don't know the economic situation over there to be able to make that statement or make a judgment based on that. So, I'm not going to. What I will say is that if you follow this link in the description down below that is labeled as Rohingya UNHCR, that goes to the United Nations website that is handling the human rights issues over there. And you can donate there if you would like to try and help, if you are able to help. I encourage you to do so. However, if you are not financially capable of doing so, don't.
But you can still share the link to people that
share
might
the link,
be
spread it around. Spread it far and wide. Share the video. Hell, you can mirror this video on your own channel as long as it gets out there. Feel free to edit it down to just these 2 stories if you want to. I don't care. For this particular video. Don't mess with the other videos, but this one, do what you want. As long as this message keeps being spread and people keep getting informed about these issues. Anyway, looking at the rest of the viewer comments, no more have come in. So at this point, I'd say it's about time for us to go ahead and bring our show to a close today, Harry.
Yeah, it's
Usually I like to end on a high note, but unfortunately, this one is just going to be flat.
Yeah.
So anyway, everybody else, stay safe out there. Follow your social distancing protocols. If you can help, go to the links below. Do what you can. Spread them around. Let people know. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Check the articles and links down below. We pretty much read them mostly verbatim. But if you'd like to read more and get some more detail or follow some of the links in there, as you saw me hover over in some instances, that lead to other stories to take you further down that rabbit hole. If you would like to do that, go ahead and do so.
Yeah, and, happy Father's Day or whatever.
Yeah, happy Father's Day. Don't be a disappointment your entire life. There, that's the PSA of the week. Don't be a disappointment your entire life. Anyways, everybody have fun, stay safe this weekend, and we'll see y'all again next week. Have a good one.